Hello everyone. As a leader, learning to read between the lines is just as important as reading the actual lines. Now, when it comes to financial statements and reading the data, gleaning what those trends, themes, and patterns are can give much insight. This past week, we explored the ins and outs of the IRS Form 990. Beyond just familiarizing ourselves with the basics of the form and why it is needed, remember that this is an annual tax form that is submitted by nonprofits. Learning to read and look for clues is important, not just for the nonprofit leaders, but anyone interested in finding out more about the organization. Aside from anything publicly available from the organization, such as an annual report or letter to contributors, the 990 is the only other document that explicitly contains financial and other information. So what are some important things to look for that can give more insight to the organization? Think about if you were a potential donor and wanted to see if the organization compensates its board. Would it change your opinion of them if they did? What about if the nonprofit spent a lot of money hiring consultants? What would this say about the overall strategic direction of the organization? Another good question is, how much did the organization make and spend on fundraising efforts, such as events and other fundraisers, or if they hired a professional fundraiser for their operation? All these things and more are right on the 990 form, and the document that I posted in the announcements gives a lot more detail and insights into certain features of the 990. Used in conjunction with other forms of data, like the website or any other communication tool used by the organization, stakeholders can get a better rounded picture of things, and then key decisions could be made from there. Now, this is all good from a stakeholder perspective, but I also want to mention how leaders at nonprofit organizations can use the 990 as a tool for marketing and outreach. The first thing to consider if you are a nonprofit leader is to think about who is reading your 990 beyond the IRS. Current and potential board members and employees, prospective donors, and even watchdog groups like Charity Navigator are all looking at the 990. Now, they could be looking at it for a variety of reasons, to join the organization, to make a donation, an evaluation, or even just for any aberrations. Think about what messages you send out to these groups if you listed your board members receiving any compensation, or how you use monies for travel or other expenses. Think about what messages you send when you list your CEO compensation. Most importantly, think about how the program expenses listed on the form reflect your mission and vision. Do they? Is it clear? Also, what are the relationships with other organizations? How will this affect how the organization is perceived? One key thing is not to hide any bad news, like a drop in income or increase in expenses, but you should always be ready to explain it if there are any questions. Because the 990 has previous year's data, think about what this means to an outsider looking at finances over a period of time. Ultimately, you want to leverage the power of the 990 and ensure that you describe in detail the mission of the organization. Do not repeat the same text year after year, which is common, but account for any changes and features that are worth highlighting. Remember, there is a space for that narrative, so take advantage of the space in your benefit. Take advantage of the space to your benefit. Doing so sets the organization apart and shows good leadership. Now, I want to spend just a few minutes on your next paper, which is due this Sunday. It's a financial analysis, so make sure you highlight key financial features of a nonprofit organization. Find one that is accessible or familiar to you and do some research on its financials. use the 990 and other sources of financial and organizational documentation to build evidence for your claims. In the analysis, I want you to give some background on the organization and then, using financial data, discuss key features that you think are important. In addition, discuss who the key stakeholders are and what some of those roles and responsibilities they have regarding fiscal management. This is important because part of the paper will be to get your insight onto any improvements that could be made in terms of fiscal management. Things like maintain a stable cash flow, or lessen expenses to contractors, for example. I would like to see specific conclusions based on the data. In essence, analyze this as if you were interested in making a donation, but don't know anything about the nonprofit. What questions would you ask, and why are those questions important? That is what I look forward to seeing, of course, as always, APA style. So that's all for now. So continue to talk during the weekend, get the papers finished and submitted on Sunday, and I will see you all online.